Story 1. I never thought a dive in the dark waters off the coast of Maine would become the most bone-chilling experience of my life. My name is Lena, and I've always been drawn to the murky depths, a passion that started in my hometown and grew into an obsession. It was early autumn, and I had arranged a dive with a small crew, including my longtime dive buddy Mark, who had grown up hearing tales of the eerie legends of our local waters. Little did I know that one fateful descent would leave me questioning everything. The day was overcast, the sky a heavy gray, mirroring my unsettled mood as we prepared our gear on the creaking deck of an old research boat. "You sure about this?" Mark asked, his tone half joking, but laced with genuine worry as he tightened his equipment. "Absolutely," I replied, my voice steadier than I felt. We had done countless dives together, but there was something unusual about today. The water's surface was rippled by a brisk current, and the wind seemed to whisper secrets I wasn't ready to understand. Without delay, we plunged into the cold Atlantic, the water swallowing our shapes and numbing our limbs. We descended along a guideline, a routine we trusted implicitly in low-visibility dives. But as we dropped below 40 feet, a strange sensation gripped me, an unsettling feeling that the depths were watching us. "You feel that?" I murmured to Mark, who was scanning the darkness ahead. His only reply was a tight nod, his expression shadowed by a flicker of fear. At around 55 feet, the familiarity of our group vanished. Mark and I exchanged uneasy glances, and the silence between us grew dense with unspoken questions. "Where is everyone?" Mark's voice was a low whisper that barely carried through the oppressive water. We lingered at the bottom of the guideline, our pulse racing as seconds stretched into minutes. The usual chatter of our dive group was nowhere to be heard. Instead, the only sound was the relentless pulse of our own breathing and the distant echo of water against metal. Time became a torturous loop. I checked my depth gauge and regulator, every instrument affirming that nothing was wrong with our gear. Yet an overwhelming dread clawed at my insides. "Lena, this isn't right," Mark finally said, his eyes darting to the faint outline of the guideline disappearing into the void. I could only agree silently. We needed to abort, but something compelled us to wait. A hope, misguided perhaps, that our companions would surface any moment. Then it happened. A faint, muffled sound, as if someone was calling out from beyond the veil, reached our ears. "Hello," I called, my voice trembling as I tried to pierce the dense obscurity. There was no answer, only the sound repeated in my mind like an echo from another world. "Did you hear that?" Mark asked, his face contorting in confusion. I nodded, and our eyes met in a shared silent terror. After what seemed like an eternity, we ascended slowly, our movements mechanical and desperate. Breaking through the water's surface, we were met with a disquieting sight. The buoy was adrift, and there, slumped against it, was one lone figure from our team. His eyes were wide with disbelief as he stared blankly at the horizon where our boat should have been. "The boat! It's gone!" he whispered in broken sentences, his voice cracking with panic. The shock of it all struck me hard. Only moments ago, I had believed in the safety of numbers, in the comfort of routine. Now uncertainty loomed like a specter over everything. Within minutes, our minds raced through the possibilities. Had we been abandoned by a careless crew? Was this some twisted prank? Mark tried to calm us down, suggesting that maybe the boat had drifted away due to the swell, leaving us temporarily stranded. But his words did little to soothe the terror that gripped us. As we clung to the buoy, each wave seemed to carry away a piece of our sanity, the cold water now mingling with an even colder dread. In those final moments of isolation, I found myself alone with my thoughts in the vast, indifferent ocean. "Why are we here?" I whispered aloud, unable to shake the feeling that something far more sinister than a lost boat was at play. The water around us churned ominously, as if in response to my questioning. I could almost believe that the depths had decided to reclaim us, pulling us into their eternal, abyssal embrace. It was then that the unexplainable struck. A sudden, inexplicable current surged beneath us, tugging at the buoy as if guided by an unseen hand. Mark grabbed my arm with a desperate strength, his eyes wide with terror. "Lena, hold on!" he shouted through gasps and frantic splashes. The buoy, that small marker of hope in a vast sea of darkness, began to drift rapidly. The lone figure at the buoy faded into the growing distance, and we were left clinging to our rapidly vanishing lifeline. Panic had taken complete control. The cold was now a secondary concern to the terror of being lost in an endless, indifferent blue void. Every muscle tensed as we struggled against the pull of the current, our frantic strokes almost synchronized in their desperation. It was as if the ocean itself had turned hostile, determined to erase all traces of human presence. I could hear Mark's panicked breathing and the splashing of our limbs, each sound magnified 1,000-fold in the oppressive silence of our isolation. For what felt like an eternity, we battled the unseen force, our minds oscillating between a desperate survival instinct and an overwhelming, paralyzing fear. It was not a situation that could be solved by reason or logic, a primal horror that left little room for explanation. Each second was a torment, every moment a battle against the inexplicable. In our struggle, the familiar rhythm of our hearts was replaced by a cacophony of rapid beats echoing in the hollow of our chests. In a final desperate surge, we managed to regain enough control to pull ourselves toward the disoriented figure who had now reappeared briefly near the buoy. His gaunt face and wild, unseeing eyes spoke of an experience so profound that it had shattered any semblance of normalcy. Something's not right, he stammered, his voice barely audible over the pounding of our hearts. We exchanged one last look, a mixture of fear, regret, and an unspoken acknowledgement that we had witnessed something beyond our understanding. Then, as abruptly as it had all begun, the water stilled. The relentless tug of the current eased, leaving us suspended in a quiet, haunting calm. The buoy drifted lazily on the surface, and the lone figure, as if released from a nightmare, began to stir, his movements robotic and devoid of the terror moments before. Without warning, the world above broke into a haze of light and color as rescue boats materialized on the horizon, their engines thrumming in the distance. Relief and bewilderment warred within us, the surreal nature of the moments before still haunting every fiber of our being. Known in the unexplainable is razor thin, and sometimes it is best not to cross it at all. And with that final thought, the incident ended as abruptly as it began, leaving behind only a lingering terror, an eerie void, and the unmistakable knowledge that some parts of our world remain forever shrouded in darkness. Story 2. I'm Nate. I live in Jupiter, Florida, and I've been diving since I was 16. I'm 32 now. What happened on that dive last summer still makes me feel sick when I think about it. It was a solo morning off a wreck I'd been to dozens of times, the Coral Queen. It's a sunken casino boat about 5 miles offshore. Depth bottoms out around 90 feet. Visibility's usually decent if you go early and beat the tourist charters. That morning, the water was like glass. I remember feeling calm, like it would be a good dive. I dropped in just after sunrise. Everything was normal. I followed the line down, equalizing, breathing easy. The Queen came into view like a ghost out of the blue. Its frame looked peaceful, fish sliding through rusted windows. I clipped my torch to my BC just in case. It's always darker inside the wreck. I planned to do a quick pass through the main lounge, check out the staircase, then loop back out. I wasn't trying to be a hero. I'd done this before. The entrance was tight but familiar. The lounge was full of silt and shadows. Fish scattered in my light as I passed. It was quiet. Still. I kept an eye on my pressure gauge. Everything was smooth. And then I saw the curtain. That's what stopped me. On the far wall, right above the old bar counter, there was this red velvet curtain, heavy. It swayed slightly like there was a current inside. But there wasn't. Not in the wreck. Not like that. I knew immediately something was wrong because that curtain shouldn't have been there. I'd never seen it before, and I'd been through that exact room a dozen times. The wreck had no fabric like that left. Most of it was stripped or rotted long ago. I hovered, staring at it. My light flickered. Just once. And I swear to God, behind that curtain I saw movement. I'm not talking about fish. Something pulled the fabric back, just an inch or two. Just enough to see what looked like a hand. Pale, wet, human. I froze. I remember holding my breath out of instinct, even though that's the last thing you should do with a regulator in your mouth. I didn't blink. I didn't move. The hand didn't move either. It just stayed there, fingers slack, like it was resting or waiting. I blinked and it was gone. The curtain settled, no current, no sign of anything. I thought maybe I imagined it. Maybe I had nitrogen narcosis, though I was only at 65 feet and it had never hit me before. Then my torch died. 1 second I had light, the next I didn't. Black. I flicked it, tapped it, nothing. I reached for my backup, clipped it off my chest, clicked it on. It lit for maybe half a second before flickering out too. Now I don't scare easily underwater. I've been tangled, bumped by sharks, caught in currents. But this was different. This was wrong. I turned slow and careful, trying not to stir silt. I could barely make out the exit through the faint light filtering in from the wreck's open windows. I started heading for it. And then I heard it. Clear as day, even through water and regulator. Nate. It came from behind the curtain. That same soft, wet voice repeated, "Nate, you're here." I wanted to bolt, but my limbs wouldn't move. I felt like my body didn't belong to me. My hands trembled. My fins scraped rusted floor. Then something stepped out from behind the curtain. Not swam, stepped. It had legs. I couldn't see its face completely, just the outline. It looked human but swollen, bloated, skin like fish belly, hair floating in a dead way, like it wasn't really underwater. And its eyes. Jesus. They were wide open, like it had drowned mid-panic, pupils fixed and milky. It raised one hand toward me. Still not swimming, just walking, like it was walking on dry land. "Nate," it said again, louder this time, "you shouldn't be here." I panicked, finally moved, kicked backward. My tank clanged against a rusted beam, and I dropped down, scrambling, stirring silt. Couldn't see. Couldn't tell where the thing was. Then a hand touched my shoulder. Cold, solid. I screamed into my reg, spun around. Nothing there. No hand, no curtain, just silt and shadows. I bolted. I don't remember how I got out. I honestly don't. Next thing I knew, I was outside the wreck, kicking up toward the light, my heart hammering in my ears. I did my safety stop at 15 feet, shaking so bad I thought I'd pass out. I kept looking down, waiting for it to follow, for that voice, but it didn't. I surfaced, hauled myself onto my boat, ripped off my gear and puked over the side. I sat there in the sun, wetsuit soaked and sticking to me, just staring at the water. It looked so calm, like none of it had happened. Story 3. I live in Kingston, Ontario, right near the edge of the St. Lawrence River. Lawrence River. It's a small city, peaceful mostly, but if you dive, you know this place is different. Beneath the surface, the river holds on to things. Not just wrecks, not just history, things. And I think I touched one. This happened 2 summers ago, late August. The water's just warm enough to be bearable in a 7mm wetsuit, and the visibility's surprisingly decent. I was diving the Wolf Islander 2, a scuttled ferry that sits in about 80 feet of water. It's a popular wreck, straightforward, good for intermediate divers, but the current rips through there fast, especially because it's smack in the middle of a shipping channel. You get careless, you drift right into the path of a tanker. That day I was diving with Mike, my regular buddy. We've done dozens of dives together, same gear configuration, same signals, same pre-dive checks. We briefed like usual, clipped into the downline, and started the descent. No problems. The wreck came into view around 40 feet, shadowy and silent like it always is. We didn't penetrate, just a circuit around the upper deck, checking out the wheelhouse, poking around some door frames. Everything normal, until it wasn't. We were heading back to the line around 25 minutes into the dive. Mike was in front on my long hose, 7 feet so he could lead, and I'd keep a hand on his calf to stay in contact. The current was nasty but manageable. He was breathing off my octo because just a few minutes earlier, he'd signaled that his primary was empty. I checked his SPG myself. Bone dry. That alone should have rattled me more. He should have had at least a third of his tank left, but we'd had issues with a leaky SPG once before, so I shrugged it off. My tank was still good, plenty of gas. I thought we were fine. We were halfway to the ascent line when I let go of his leg to clear a jammed bolt snap on my waist D-ring. Maybe 3 seconds max. When I looked up, he was gone. I whipped my head around, felt the current tugging at me harder now like it had picked up in those few seconds. I spotted him downstream, maybe 20 feet off, flailing, upside down, both fins above his head like he was caught in a windstorm. And his regulator was gone. My heart bottomed out. He'd ripped it from his mouth when he got pulled. I watched him grab one of the midlines, strung between the wreck and the ascent line. He held on, barely, his body bending backwards like the river was trying to break him in half. I kicked hard toward him, fighting the drag. My mask almost flooded from how fast I was breathing. I reeled in the long hose as I went, 7 feet of it trailing like a lifeline. He was still upside down, mouth open, eyes wide as hell. I jammed the regulator between his teeth. He bit down hard. It hissed, but something was wrong. He shook his head, clawed at it. I realized it was upside down. He flipped it himself, just in time. But in the process, he lost his grip on the line. He flew backward. I caught his BCD by sheer luck, but that tore me off the midline too. We spun together, tumbling. I wrapped both legs around the line like a python, hooked my ankles, anchored us. We hung there, him hyperventilating, me shaking so bad I couldn't check my own air. Then everything went wrong in a way I still can't explain. The water got dark, not low visibility dark, something else, like it thickened. Everything beyond 5 feet turned pitch black, like we were sitting in ink. Mike noticed too. His head snapped around, then locked onto something past my shoulder. His eyes. They changed. I've never seen that look in a person before. It wasn't panic. It was like he wasn't seeing the river anymore. He was seeing something else. He tried to speak, regulator still in. Just a garbled moan. I turned. I swear on my life. Something was there, hanging just at the edge of the dark. Not swimming, not drifting, hanging. It looked like a diver, but wrong. No bubbles, no movement, just hovering, maybe 15 feet away. The suit was old, not vintage, ancient. Canvas maybe, like early 1900s hard hat gear. Only there was no helmet, just a void where the head should have been. It moved, not toward us, just a slight shift, like it was acknowledging us. My guts twisted. My chest started cramping. My arms were locked, holding on to Mike and the rope, but I couldn't move anything else. Then the current died. Not slowed, just stopped. The river was still. That thing started drifting forward. I don't remember unclipping my reel. I don't remember what I did with the rest of the hose. I just remember digging my gloves into the rope and kicking for the ascent line with everything I had. I pulled Mike with me. He wasn't kicking. He was just staring over my shoulder, paralyzed. We hit the line and didn't stop. Blew our safety stop. Came up too fast. I don't care. We surfaced just off the stern of the dive boat. I screamed before my regulator was even out of my mouth. The captain yanked us up, swearing at us the whole time. Said we came up like torpedoes. Didn't care. We stripped gear on deck, both of us puking over the rail. Mike didn't talk. Not on the boat, not in the car, not for 2 days. When he finally did, all he said was, "It looked at me." That was it. I checked with other local divers. Nobody's lost a diver in a canvas suit down there. No local wreck matches that kind of gear. But one old-timer at the shop said something weird. He told me there were rumors, stories passed down from the freighter crews, about something in the St. Lawrence that wasn't a wreck or a fish. Story 4. I'm Rick. I live in Newcastle, UK, and about 13 years ago, I went to Australia to do my PAD, open water certification. It was meant to be this big adventure. Sun, reefs, clear water, and a couple of pints with Aussies at the end of it. You know, bucket list stuff. I wasn't new to swimming or the sea, but diving was different. More intimate, I guess. You feel like you're inside the ocean's lungs. This happened on the second day of training. We were near the Whitsundays. Water was stupidly clear, and everything went smoothly at first. Barracudas zipped past, some clownfish peeked from a coral cluster, and a stingray flapped its wings beneath us like a ghost. Everyone was loving it, all thumbs up and hand signals. But I was struggling to equalize. It started subtle, just a pressure in my right ear. I tried the usual, pinched my nose, blew gently, swallowed, got a small pop, but the pressure didn't go. Still, I figured I could muscle through it. Probably stupid, but I didn't want to be that guy who aborted the dive. Not when I'd flown 9,000 miles for it. The rest of the dive went fine. We hit about 12 meters, floated through canyons of coral, came back up slowly. By the time I surfaced, the pressure was still there, only now it had turned into this sharp, itchy throb. I got back on the boat, sat down, pulled off my mask, and said to the dive master, "Hey, I think I've got something in my ear." He barely looked up. "Just water trapped in there, mate. Happens all the time." "Doesn't feel like water," I said. "Feels like something's jammed in." "Use a cotton bud when you get back to the hotel. It'll sort itself." So I tried to leave it alone. Everyone else was drying off, laughing about a jellyfish someone nearly sat on. But the pain in my ear was getting worse. Dull but deep, like something was moving behind the eardrum. I kept sticking my pinky in, against my better judgment, and I could feel something. Not liquid, not air. Something solid. It didn't hurt when I pressed in. It hurt when I pulled my finger back out. I tried again. This time I felt a resistance. A texture, like wet paper or maybe cartilage. It shifted just slightly, and then something scraped. I jerked my hand away. There was blood under my nail. I told the dive master again. He looked annoyed. "You've probably scratched yourself. Don't poke around in there." That night the pain got worse. I couldn't sleep. It wasn't just the ache. It was this crawling sensation, like something was shifting just behind the drum, like something was alive. Next morning I skipped the dive and went to a clinic. Small place, bare walls, buzzing overhead lights. The GP checked my ear with the otoscope and instantly recoiled. "What's that?" I asked. He didn't answer at first. Just told me to stay still, then went to grab tweezers. He put on gloves and leaned in again. "I think there's a foreign object," he muttered. "Might be a bit of coral, maybe some shell. Strange." The tweezers went in. I held my breath, and then I screamed. Not because of the pain, though it was bad, but because I felt it pull back. Whatever was in there, it retracted deeper into the canal, on its own. The doctor jerked away. Okay, we're not doing this here. I'm referring you to Cairns Base Hospital. You need an ENT specialist." I never made it to Cairns. That night I was back at the hostel, trying to keep calm, lying on my side with my bad ear up. The pressure kept building. Every few minutes it felt like something was tapping from inside. Not like a heartbeat, like fingernails. I sat up around 2 a.m., dizzy from the pressure, looked in the mirror, pulled back my ear, shined a torch into the canal. I saw movement. It wasn't a reflection. It wasn't fluid. There were legs, thin, pale legs, like an insect, but translucent. And something else, curved like a hook, pressed against the skin just inside the entrance. I don't know what made me do it, but I grabbed the tweezers from my bag, sat on the bathroom floor, head tilted, hands shaking like hell. I slowly pushed the tweezers in, aiming for the shape I saw. When I touched it, it moved. It didn't retreat this time. It surged forward. The pain was indescribable. It didn't burst out. It climbed out. First a segment of something, then a bend, then the rest unfurled. A wet, translucent thing about the size of a pinky finger, segmented with tiny cilia or legs thrashing at the sides. I screamed, dropped the tweezers. The thing hit the tile and skittered, fast as lightning toward the drain. I saw it, really saw it, under the light. It didn't look like anything I'd ever seen in books or videos. Not a shrimp, not a worm. It was more like a cross between a leech and a centipede, but jelly-like and almost featureless. No eyes, just a curved appendage at the front that looked like it could hook and hold. I tried to stomp it, but it was gone before I even stood. Slipped right down the drain, and then nothing. No pain, No blood. My ear felt empty, hollow. I sat there for an hour, breathing through my teeth, listening, but the tapping was gone. Story 5. I live in a flat above a coffee shop in Oban on the west coast of Scotland. I've worked as a dive guide for 8 years, mostly taking tourists around wreck sites and sea locks. We get these eerie mornings sometimes, mist curling over the harbor like it's hiding something. But that Thursday was different. It wasn't just fog. The air felt wrong. Still, we had a group booked for the Breda wreck, and I wasn't about to cancel because of a weird feeling. I was leading 2 Dutch tourists, both experienced divers. We dropped in at 10:13 a.m. I remember the time exactly because of what happened next. The water was colder than usual. Not just cold, it bit into my skin through the suit. I chalked it up to nerves and shook it off. The SS Breda sits about 30 meters down, split down the middle from bomb damage. It's a peaceful dive normally, surrounded by silt and curious pollock. We drifted through a break in the hull, my torchlight sweeping over crates, tangled steel, and collapsed beams. I was a few meters ahead of the others, weaving through a tight corridor of rusted metal and shadow. That's when my tank clinked against the ceiling, barely touched it, and suddenly my buoyancy compensator vest started to inflate. At first I thought I'd hit the inflator hose, but the button was untouched. The vest kept swelling. I tried dumping the air, nothing. I pressed the deflate button again and again. No hiss, no change. Panic set in real fast. When your vest inflates uncontrollably, you shoot to the surface like a missile, and from 30 meters, that can mean an embolism. You don't get second chances with that. I kicked downward hard, pushing against the sudden lift, grabbing at a beam to anchor myself. I waved at the others, but they didn't see. The light from my torch shook wildly. I fumbled for the manual inflator tube and tried again to release the air, but the vest just kept growing tighter around my chest. Then the pressure in my ears changed, fast. I was rising. My regulator almost yanked from my mouth. My legs thrashed. I remember screaming into the mouthpiece. Not words, just instinct. I twisted to grab something, anything, but the wreck slid away beneath me. All I could see above was green-black haze and my own bubbles rushing faster than I was. I had maybe 10 seconds before I'd hit the surface. Then something yanked me down. At first I thought it was a beam from the wreck. Maybe I'd gotten snagged. But when I looked down, there was nothing there. Just water, no rope, no metal, no hand. But I was dropping, faster than I'd ever moved underwater, like someone had filled my suit with lead. My ears screamed as the pressure surged back. I flailed in the dark, heart hammering. The world spun. When I leveled out, I was back in the wreck, back in the same corridor. But something was off. The silt was still, too still, like it hadn't been disturbed, like I had never been there. My torch flickered, then died. In that blackness, something brushed my arm. It wasn't a fish. It was cold and dry. I turned sharply, bubbles escaping from my regulator in a sharp hiss. I reached for my backup torch, hands trembling, snapped it on. The beam landed on a face, not a diver, a man, pale, bloated, suspended inches from me, eyes open but dead. His mouth was wide, too wide like it had been torn. His skin moved. Something was underneath it. Then his arm twitched. I kicked back so hard I slammed into a beam. Pain lit up my spine. My mouthpiece almost slipped out. The figure drifted forward, arms slowly raising, not from buoyancy, deliberately. I didn't wait. I turned and swam, blind and fast, crashing into the wreck's sides, scraping my gear, not caring. My vest was still overinflated, but I didn't stop to fix it. I didn't stop at all. I just wanted out. I reached the exit hole in the hull and pushed through. My torch caught a glimpse of the Dutch divers. They were ahead of me now, swimming toward the boat. They hadn't seen a thing. I floated up carefully this time, manually releasing air from my vest as I rose, one hand clenched around my knife, though I didn't even know why. Every shadow under me felt like it moved. When I broke the surface, I ripped off my mask and shouted to the boat crew, waving frantically. My voice cracked. I don't even remember what I said. Later, back on shore, I checked my dive computer. It logged the incident, sudden ascent, followed by an abrupt descent of exactly 11.2 meters in less than 3 seconds. Impossible, unless something pulled me. The data was there. I didn't imagine it. I never told the tourists what I saw. I don't take people to the Brado anymore. I haven't dived since. Whatever was in that wreck, it wasn't a hallucination. It wasn't nitrogen narcosis. Story 6. I live in Reno, Nevada, but this happened off the coast of Belize about 6 years ago. I've only talked about it once to my brother, and I made it sound like a panic dive. But that's not the truth, not even close. I was on a dive trip with my girlfriend, Alana. We'd been together about a year. She'd just gotten her open water cert, and this was our first dive vacation together. We were staying on a tiny island resort that catered to divers. Just one dive shop, a few bungalows, and not much else. No phones, no internet, just the reef. We'd done a few shallow reef dives already. The last dive on the third day was the big one, the Blue Hole. It's famous. Giant sinkhole, hundreds of feet deep, surrounded by reef. We weren't going all the way down, only to about 130 feet, but even that's serious, especially for someone new. Alana was nervous. She kept asking me about nitrogen narcosis and what happens if your regulator fails. I tried to keep her calm. Just stay with me, I told her. We do the safety stop and we come up slow. It's all good. The dive itself started fine. Flat seas, clear water, a little current but nothing unmanageable. There were 6 of us in the group, plus the dive master. We descended along the reef wall, the light fading fast as we dropped. About 10 minutes in, Alana tapped my shoulder. Her mask was flooding. I saw the panic in her eyes immediately. She was trying to clear it, but she wasn't doing the proper technique, just flailing. I swam over and made the hand sign to stop. Pause. She shook her head. She was rising fast. I grabbed her BCD and pulled her down. We were still at around 60 feet, too deep for an emergency ascent. I deflated her BCD to stop the rise and she started kicking at me, actually kicking. I remember thinking, she's going to bolt. She's going to get the bends or an embolism or worse. Then something else happened. We were both hovering maybe 50 feet down. I saw her eyes shift, not at me, but past me. Her arms stopped flailing. She went completely still. I turned to look behind me, expecting the group or maybe a big fish. There was something in the water, maybe 15 feet away. No bubbles, no tank, just a person, no gear, no mask, nothing. Just a pale figure floating vertically, arms down at its sides, staring right at us. At first I thought it was a dead body, then it moved. Not swimming, drifting, but against the current, toward us. I grabbed Alana's arm and shook her, trying to break her stare. She didn't move. I turned back. The figure was closer, too close. Its face wasn't right. It looked human, but the features were off. The mouth was open but not breathing. Its eyes were black, like they were full of ink. I grabbed my dive light and shined it directly at it. Nothing. No reaction. No flinch. Just hovering there, inches from me now. Then Alana bolted. She kicked upward hard, no control, inflating her BCD as she went. I tried to grab her fin but missed. I went after her immediately. As I rose, I looked down one more time. It was still there, but now it was moving again, fast, upward, following us. I caught up with Alana around 20 feet. She was coughing into her regulator, her eyes wide and leaking. I tried to slow her ascent, held on to her, dumped air from both our BCDs, made her look at me. We hovered at 15 feet, did the safety stop or tried to, but the moment I looked down again, it was there, just below us, looking up. I could see its mouth now, wide open, more than humanly possible. Not a scream, not a breath, just void, like staring into a drain. I remember yelling into my regulator, but it came out as bubbles. I kept watching it, trying to make sense of what I was seeing, and the longer I looked, the more I felt this pulling. Not physical, but like it wanted me to follow. It felt like gravity in the wrong direction. Alana grabbed my arm and yanked me toward the surface. We ascended too fast, way too fast. I felt it in my chest, the pressure shift, the panic. but all I could think about was getting out of the water. We broke the surface like we were shot out of a cannon. The boat was about 30 feet away. Alana didn't speak, just swam hard for it. I followed, checking over my shoulder every few seconds. I swear to you, I swear on my life, it was still there, just below the surface, watching. When we got on the boat, we were both coughing, half crying. The dive master was yelling at us, asking what happened, why we surfaced early, why we didn't finish our stop. Alana looked at me like I was a stranger. "I thought you were trying to drown me," she said. "What? You grabbed me and dragged me down. I thought you were trying to kill me." I tried to explain, but she shook her head. "I didn't see anything, just you." That's the worst part. She doesn't remember it. Story 7. I live in Cape Coral, Florida, grew up around water. By the time I hit 24, I already had over 80 dives logged. That year, I booked a solo weekend dive trip down to Key Largo just to clear my head and get under for a bit. I'd been through a rough breakup, and the water's always been my reset button. I wasn't looking for anything deep, just reefs and maybe a wreck or two. The second morning, we were scheduled to hit the Spiegel Grove. Big shipwreck, 510 feet long, sunk intentionally in 2002. It's popular, sometimes crowded. That day, the water was flat, sun like a torch overhead, visibility supposedly excellent. There were 11 of us on the boat, all strangers. I didn't have a buddy, but I struck up a conversation with this guy, Mark. Said he'd logged 30 dives but never done a wreck before. New gear, fresh certification. His confidence seemed to outweigh his experience. Dive shop required him to take a guide. The guide, a local instructor named Henry, had 2 students with him doing their advanced open water checkouts. Mark was assigned to tag along with Henry, and I figured I might as well join that group. Safety in numbers. Before we entered, Henry laid out the plan. He'd descend the mooring line first, then the students, then me, then Mark. We'd regroup at the bridge of the ship around 70 feet down. Standard stuff. Now, before the dive, Mark and I double-checked gear. Everything looked okay, but his tank strap felt a little loose. I mentioned it, and he tightened it without much thought. Looking back, I should have pressed harder. We dropped into the water and hit current like a freight train. It was ripping sideways. I had to white-knuckle the descent line to stay on course. Took longer than usual to reach the deck. When I got to the bridge level, I stopped. Something wasn't right. Henry and the students weren't there. I hovered, waiting. Then Mark descended and floated next to me. His eyes were wide behind the mask, his regulator bouncing from heavy breathing. I gave the okay signal. He returned it. Then I saw it. His tank was half slipped out of his BCD strap and swinging behind him in the current. I grabbed his shoulder and turned him, motioned at the tank. He didn't realize it had slipped. I moved behind him and started working the strap, trying to loop it back around. It had somehow knotted around his first stage and was twisting every time he moved. We were at 70 feet, current yanking at us, and I was burning through air faster than I liked. After a few minutes, I managed to get the strap around the tank. Not perfectly, but enough to hold. A plastic piece was missing, probably floated off. I didn't want to take any chances. I gave him the thumbs up and time to go back up. He nodded. We ascended slowly, hands tight on the line. A few meters up, I noticed Mark's breathing sounded strange, sort of bubbly, like wet gurgling. I made eye contact and he looked panicked. He yanked his regulator out, shook it, put it back in. More bubbles. His second stage had cracked. Water was leaking into his mouthpiece. He motioned something frantic. I held up my alternate and he took it. His breathing steadied a little. We surfaced after a slow safety stop, hauled ourselves back onto the boat. I expected Henry to be up already, but he wasn't. The other 2 students were back, chatting quietly in the corner. Mark coughed salt water out of his lungs. I asked him if he was okay, and he just nodded. 10 minutes passed, then 20. Finally, Henry surfaced. Calm, slow, climbed up like it was just another dive. He didn't even ask Mark how he was doing. Mark didn't say much, just stared at his tank like it had personally betrayed him. Now, that should have been the end of it. But that night I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about how Henry and the students weren't at the bridge. I hadn't seen them at all during the dive. That's not normal. Even if visibility was lower than expected, at that depth and distance, We should have crossed paths. I went to the dive shop the next morning to drop off my rental gear and casually asked one of the instructors, "So, Henry's group go back down again today?" She looked confused. "Henry?" "Yeah, a guy from yesterday. Took a couple students out with him to the Grove." She paused. "Henry hasn't worked here in almost 2 years." I laughed, thinking she was joking. But she wasn't. She told me Henry went missing in 2023. Last seen diving the Spiegel Grove with 2 students. The whole group never surfaced. Coast Guards searched for days. Never found the bodies. They found all their tanks still clipped to the mooring line. I felt my stomach drop. I pulled up my GoPro footage later that day, just to make sure I wasn't going crazy. I'd clipped it to my chest for the descent. Most of it was shaky, current pulling me hard, bubbles in the way. But around the 70-foot mark, when I hovered near the bridge, when I was supposed to be looking at Henry and his students, there was no one there. No fins, no bubbles, nothing. But if you freeze frame at 2:43, right when I turn to look at Mark and signal his tank is loose, there's something behind him, way off in the distance. It doesn't look like a diver, more like someone crawling along the hull, not swimming, crawling, no bubbles, no gear. The shape turns, just barely, like it noticed the camera. Then it slides behind the port side and disappears. I didn't show Mark. I didn't tell anyone. But I've never dived the Grove again. Story 8. I live in San Jose, California, and I've been diving off the coast for about 8 years. I'm not a professional, just a weekend guy who loves the ocean. My most disturbing dive happened last October, on my birthday, when I joined a charter out of Monterey Bay. It was a full-day outing, 2 boat dives during daylight, and then a night dive for those brave or stupid enough to stay. I was the latter. My 2 buddies had backed out of the night dive, said they were too wiped after the second descent. Honestly, I was beat too, but one of the other solo divers, a guy named Mark, offered to buddy up. I figured I'd regret skipping more than I'd regret being tired. The plan was simple, a controlled descent into the kelp forest off Point Lobos. 30 feet max, slow loop, then back. We went down just after sunset with lights on and full tanks. I followed Mark's lead. At first it was beautiful. Still water, our beams catching fish darting between swaying kelp stalks. It had that weird, calming feel you get on a good night dive. Quiet, like the whole ocean's holding its breath. About 15 minutes in, I noticed I was breathing faster. Not panic, just that creeping discomfort, like something was off. My light flicked past something that didn't belong. A shape, pale, human-sized, hanging vertical in the water, motionless behind the kelp. I froze. "Mark," I said through my reg, even though I knew he couldn't hear me. I pointed, trying to get his attention, but he was about 10 feet ahead, shining his light along the seafloor. I turned my beam back. Nothing. Just blades of kelp drifting like fingers. I told myself I imagined it, just light bouncing weird. I've seen tricks like that before. Diving messes with your perception, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching. My chest felt tight, and I couldn't tell if I was cold or just scared. Then my tank snagged. Kelp. Not unusual. I turned slowly and reached back to untangle it, but my fins bumped something. Something soft. I whipped around, light flailing through the water. It was a face, a woman's face, pale and dead, maybe 2 feet from mine. Her eyes were open, black. Her skin was almost translucent in my light, like jellyfish flesh, and her hair floated in dark strands around her, mouth slightly open. No regulator, no mask, just there. I screamed, bubbles everywhere. I backed up instinctively and got more tangled in the kelp. My heart slammed so hard I thought I'd pass out. My light flickered and cut off. Pitch black. I was gasping, full panic. Couldn't move. I thrashed, trying to find my backup torch. I clawed at the kelp, but it only wrapped tighter. I felt something brush my hand. Cold, soft skin. She was still there. I think she touched me. The backup torch finally clicked on and I aimed it straight ahead. Nothing. No face, no body, just water. But the kelp around me had coiled unnaturally tight. Not just snagged, wrapped, like rope. I started slicing at it with my dive knife, barely aware of where Mark was. I didn't care. I needed out. Then behind me, clear as day, I heard it. A voice, not through the water, in my head. It was a woman, whispering, "Let me up." My chest locked. I screamed into the regulator again and hacked at the kelp until I broke free. I didn't even try to find Mark. I kicked up as hard and fast as I could, risking a dangerous ascent. But I didn't care. I just wanted air and open sky. I broke the surface and yanked my mask up, gasping. The dive boat was maybe 20 yards away. Someone saw my light and waved. Mark surfaced 2 minutes later. He swam to me yelling, "What happened? You shot up like a rocket." I couldn't answer. I couldn't speak. Back on the boat, I sat shivering, not from the cold, just trying to make sense of what I saw. Mark said I got tangled and panicked, said I must have imagined the face. I didn't argue. But that night in my motel room, I found something in my wetsuit hood, a piece of hair, long, black, not mine, not synthetic, not from the suit. It smelled like salt and rot. I flushed it. I haven't dived at night since, and I never will again. Story 9. I don't talk about this often. It makes people uncomfortable, but I know what I saw, and I know what I felt. My name's Gavin. I live in Monterey, California. Been diving for over 15 years, mostly around the bay. Point Lobos, Lover's Point, Carmel River. I've logged hundreds of dives. That day, everything was normal. Cold water, solid visibility. It was supposed to be a solo deep dive along a kelp wall I knew well, near McCabe Beach. It was late October. Gray sky overhead, water around 52 degrees Fahrenheit. I went in just after dawn. The sun hadn't quite made it through the clouds, which made everything underwater look a bit dimmer, even with my light. Kelp swayed slow and steady above me like tall, underwater trees. I dropped to about 80 feet. That's when I noticed the sand looked wrong. The bottom was torn up, like something massive had bulldozed through the area. Sea stars overturned, giant holes where abalone should have been clinging. No sign of fish, no sign of anything really. Just this long path of destruction that cut through the kelp like a scar. At first I figured it was poachers or maybe a storm surge, but it didn't look like either. The pattern was too clean and too fresh. Sand still clouded parts of the water like whatever had done this had just passed through. I hovered, checking my gauges. All good. My heart rate was a little up, but I told myself it was nothing. Just eerie. Maybe a sea lion stampede. I'd seen them do weird things before. Then I heard it. It sounded like a low moan, or maybe a groan, muffled through the water. Not mechanical, organic. It didn't come from above. It came from deep in the sand trench. I turned, scanning with my dive light, thinking maybe I'd see a trapped animal. But there was nothing. Just that strange moaning again, low and drawn out. My gut twisted. I've heard whales through the water before, even infrasound, but this was closer, much closer, and wrong. I should have surfaced. That's on me, but I was too curious, or maybe just too stupid. I followed the disturbed trench. It led toward a drop-off I'd never seen before. That's when I noticed the water temperature dropping, fast. I checked my dive computer, from 52 degrees Fahrenheit to 43 degrees Fahrenheit in less than a minute. I hadn't changed depth, and the light, my dive torch, started dimming. It was fully charged. I tapped it. It flickered, then went out. Total blackness. I still don't know why I didn't panic. Maybe shock. I reached for my backup light, clicked it on. It worked. But the water around me looked murkier, like shadows were moving in it. Then I saw something rise from the trench. It was long. That's the only word I can use. Long and slow. Not swimming, rising, like it had been lying beneath the sand for a long time and decided now was the time to wake up. The head, or what I thought was the head, emerged first. It wasn't shaped like anything I've seen, almost like a stretched eyeless seal skull. No mouth, just folds of pale, sagging skin, and something under the skin that pulsed. The body followed, wider than a man's torso, ribbed like a centipede, but smooth like whale skin. It didn't move with muscle. It just floated. I froze. I couldn't move. It passed 10 feet from me and never turned, never paused. But I felt it see me. I swear to you, I felt it look inside me. My dive computer alarmed. Depth warning. I had dropped 15 feet without realizing. My buoyancy was shot. My ears were screaming from the pressure change. I looked back up and couldn't see the surface anymore. The kelp canopy had gone dark, like something massive had blocked out the light above me. That was the moment. That's when it hit me. Pure, hard fear. Not just fear of death, fear of understanding. Like my brain finally caught up and realized I was looking at something I was never supposed to see. Something old, older than the ocean. The thing disappeared into the darkness below, back into the trench. Gone without a sound. I shot back up too fast. I know it was a dumb move, but I had no control anymore. My brain just screamed up. I breached the surface coughing and ripped my mask off, gasping. No one else around. Boat was fine. Sky still gray. I was only down for 26 minutes, but it felt like hours. I've never been back to that site. Story 10. I live in Huntington Beach, California, about a mile inland. I'm 31 now, but this happened when I was 16, something I've never been able to shake, even after all these years. I've only told a few people. No one really gets it unless they've been underwater in total darkness, with nothing but your breath and a flashlight between you and whatever else might be down there. I was working toward my advanced open water POI cert at the time. One of the electives was night diving. I'd already chosen deep diving and fish identification. My instructor offered to let us double up, so we scheduled a deep night dive off Catalina Island. I was pumped. Night dive and deep dive in one go. More fish to log, and I figured I'd be a step closer to rescue diver. The group was mostly kids around my age. 4 of us, plus the instructor, Rick. Solid guy, ex-Navy, calm as a statue. The plan was simple. Descend to 120 feet, follow Rick's light, no wandering, no hero stuff. Catalina's beautiful during the day. Clear water, thick kelp forests, curious sea life. But at night it's something else. It's not pitch black, not exactly. Your light cuts about 10 feet ahead, but it's like floating in ink. Quiet, too quiet. You can hear your breath louder than anything else. We dropped just after 9 p.m. Everything went fine at first. I logged 2 scorpion fish, a giant kelp fish, and an octopus in the first 20 minutes. We were cruising low through the kelp canopy, flashlights swinging slow. Everyone was chill, until Eric, one of the guys in our group, started drifting out of formation. I saw him kick a little too hard, spinning slightly toward a slope in the rock wall we were told to avoid. Rick flicked his light fast in the no pattern. I could see it clearly. Eric must have missed it or misread it. He turned and swam deeper into the kelp toward a shadowed crevice in the rock. I thought maybe he saw something interesting. Octopus, maybe, but he wasn't supposed to leave the formation. I turned to signal Rick, but he was already heading after him. I followed and the other 2 stayed where they were, hovering in place. It got tight fast. The kelp started thickening around us, and I had to hold my light with both hands just to push through without tangling. My heart rate kicked up. I couldn't see Eric anymore, just flickers of his fin light maybe 20 feet ahead. Then Rick's light dropped out of sight. Gone. I froze. Not like a metaphor. I literally couldn't move for a second. Just me, the sound of bubbles and black water pressing in on all sides. I blinked hard and kept moving. Slowly. When I found the crevice, it didn't look natural. It wasn't some little nook in the rock wall, like you see sometimes where the reef folds in on itself. It was this long, narrow opening, too symmetrical, perfectly oval. No jagged rock, just a smooth darkness. I could see Eric's fin light inside it, motionless, just hovering there. I flashed my light into the opening. It didn't reflect back. It felt like the beam just disappeared, like I was pointing it into a tunnel made of velvet. Then Rick appeared out of nowhere. His light snapped on next to mine and lit up Eric. The dude was frozen, staring straight ahead. Regulator still in, mask on, but not moving. not even blinking. Rick swam up behind him and touched his shoulder. Nothing. I watched Rick try again, harder this time. Eric finally twitched, like he'd just woken up. Then he bolted. I mean, full panic mode. He kicked so fast he nearly knocked Rick's mask loose. Shot right past me, into the kelp. Rick signaled for me to stay. I nodded, breathing fast. He swam a little closer to the crevice, maybe 5 feet away, and aimed his flashlight inside again. Then something happened. The water shimmered, not like a current or silt cloud. It shimmered like heat does above asphalt, but underwater, and only inside the crevice. Rick's beam flickered, and the kelp around us suddenly started swaying, like there was a surge, but there wasn't. My pressure gauge read steady. My compass started spinning, just slowly turning, like I was moving, but I wasn't. And then Rick dropped his light. It just slipped out of his hand and sank. No reaction. He hovered there, frozen like Eric had been. I reached for him but stopped. He was mouthing something, not talking, mouthing, like he was trying to scream but no sound came out. His eyes were wide behind the mask. He turned slowly toward me, and I swear to God, his pupils were dilated all the way. No color left, just black eyes. I didn't wait. I kicked upward as hard as I could, not caring about safety stops or ascent speed. My lungs felt tight, my head light, but I couldn't stay down there. The kelp scraped past my arms and mask like fingers. I didn't look down once, not even when I felt something tug lightly at my fin. I breached maybe 100 yards from the dive boat, threw off my mask and screamed. The deckhand hauled me up. I kept yelling, "Eric! Rick! They're still down there! Something's down there!" They pulled Eric out 5 minutes later. He'd surfaced on the opposite side, shaking so bad they had to tie him down to get his gear off. He wouldn't talk, not for hours. Eventually, he just said, "I was inside something. I don't know what it was." Rick came up last, almost 20 minutes after we did. Too long. He was conscious but vacant. EMTs took him to a hyperbaric chamber immediately. I visited him a week later in Long Beach Memorial. He looked at me once, then said, "Don't ever go back there. It's not a cave." I asked what he meant. He just kept repeating, "It's not a cave. It's not a cave." I haven't gone diving since, and I never will.